Do you ever wonder how your relationship with your caretakers has affected your relationship with your body and food? Probably not, but you should now because you are listening to the Mindset Mirror Connection podcast. And in today's episode, we're going to talk about how your attachment style ultimately affects how you show up for yourself, both with your nutrition, your food, and obviously self-care. So if you're ready, listen up and lean in as we elevate your mind. Welcome.
We're here.
Attachment style.
This kind of transfers over into your Deja Vu podcast. Yeah.
I know. Yes. Which I am loving the names of my podcasts.
Are
so
you?
I have Groundhog's Day, which was the first episode. Then we had Ghosting, Breadcrumbing, Love Bombing, Oh My. And then we had Six Finance, 6'5", Blue Eyes. Have you not heard that song? I'm looking for a guy in finance, 6'5".
No.
Trust fund, Blue Eyes, or something like that.
What's that by?
I don't know.
Oh, okay.
And it's all about like why you have a type.
Oh,
Yeah. Then we did what not to do on Valentine's Day, which drops tomorrow. And then what to do on Valentine's Day, which drops on Valentine's Day. So it's like a 15-minute podcast.
Oh,
much
good.
Shorter.
Yeah.
They're like 15 to 30 minutes.
Oh, that's perfect.
Yeah. So, speaking of that, if you are new to this podcast, we are going to talk about our lives, babies, puppies, television, and so much more. So if you don't want to listen to that, please look at the show notes below to skip to our conversation today. Okay. I have beef with the Super Bowl commercial.
Okay, go for it.
So
I was in bed by 7, so I only saw I got to halftime show and I was like, I'm done.
I only watched the halftime show.
Oh, really?
And then, I was like, whatever. I want to read this book. Trying to finish this book. So it's like, we are a society where obesity is killing everyone. We are a society where 74% of Americans are overweight, and the weight loss drugs are just made for profit, not patients. We are keeping people stuck and sick. And I'm like, yeah. And then it's like, until Hers and Hims now allows you to buy GLP-1s for cheaper than everywhere else, and we're helping people. And I'm like, no. We were so strong until 30 seconds in.
Funny about that. So we were talking because Michael's family was here this weekend. And so his brother's really into fitness.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah. So at least one of them is. So him and I usually chat about it. And so he was asking if my opinion on GLP-1s changed. And I said, absolutely not. And then so Michael's mom, because of their insurance and whatnot, so she's like the contact, I would assume, of the insurance brokerage and all that. And she was like, yeah, it was so strange. Insurance reached out to me multiple times asking if it's something that we would want to offer on our plan. She goes, the first time I thought it was just spam, so I just ignored it. But then she said they kept following up trying to ask me.
Wow.
And I was like, she's like, it was really weird. I'm like, oh
so
my
strange.
gosh.
Well, and here's the thing, like a GLP-1 can be a tool in the toolbox, but what they're not talking about is
how you got there.
Exactly. And
what you're going to do
literally
after.
It said, we're keeping people sick and stuck.
Yes.
Until Hims and Hers now is providing GLP-1s at a lower cost. Also, Hims and Hers stock went up insanely because of this.
I thought that was like more of like a Viagra thing.
They have Viagra.
Okay.
They have all the things. They're basically like a secondary pharmacy, but they're talking shit about the pharmaceutical company.
See, that's the other thing. Like they talk shit about it, but I'm like, okay, but how are you going to get that half dose for the compound pharmacy?
Right.
Like that's what you need to be doing.
Well, it just nothing about with proper diet and exercise. I didn't hear that at all. Maybe I missed that. Because we all know that number one, this is just keeping you dependent on Hims and Hers. This is keeping you dependent on the GLP-1. You're not learning about the mental side of why 74% of Americans are overweight. It's not because you fell down one day and got in a larger body.
Yeah.
You have a poor relationship with food. You use food as a reward. You use food as an avoidant. You use food as a way to fill emotional needs in your life. And on top of that, we're not talking about when we are on GLP-1, we eat less.
Yeah.
Naturally, when you eat less, you have less nutrients, vitamins, minerals.
Well, and it kills the cells in your gut lining.
Yes.
So then you don't absorb the nutrients that you eat.
Those are the fucking things that keep us well. The opposite of what? Sick. Right?
Yeah.
And then learning lifestyle and not diet culture lifestyle we teach here. Like how to move your body in a way that serves you, how to eat sustainably for you, how to do everything for you. We're not teaching any of that. So what are we doing? Keeping people stuck. So
It's really
the
hit
commercials
ya,
are
huh?
fucking. I was in the sauna last night and I was like, gonna do a screen where you can like have the commercial playing in the background and then I'm like standing there talking. But I was like, I don't want to deal with the bullshit that people are gonna be like, I lost all this pound, this weight on GLP-1. That's great. How's your gut lining? How's your relationship with food still? Do you like the body that you see in the mirror? Probably fucking not.
That's one thing I see a lot in the forums too, like on the Facebook groups that I'm in for like fitness and health and whatnot, is like they'll talk about I read it and I could be wrong as they're justifying why they're doing it, because I see I'm taking it to help with the food noise. I'm taking it, and then they'll say and da 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 da. But it's always like to help with the food noise, help with the food. And it's like, why are you having food noise though? Why are you having that?
Right.
Like, what are we're helping suppress it. But then what?
I want to tell everyone the reason why you have food noise is because of your years and decades of fucking dieting in these restrictive ways. Your body is literally like, help me.
Yeah.
Help me, feed me.
It's so funny we're having this conversation. So I was do you know what Marco Polo is? The app?
Kind of.
Okay, so it's like a video app. It's like basically texting but on video, and you can watch it anytime. It's nice. So I was messaging with my cousin's wife, who I'm close with, and she's like, you and Christina ruined me, because she listens to us on YouTube. And I was like, like I'm on the other end, like, continue. She goes, let me tell you what happened. So this girlfriend of hers is like, she's trying to work out, and so she knows her name's Meg, that Meg works out. So she's like, why don't you come with me? And so they went to Burn Bootcamp. And she's like, because I was telling her like before, when she was earlier postpartum, like all you have to do is like 20 minutes at home. That's it. Like, and she found like this shape program from a magazine. I was like, first of all, you still get magazines.
Hey.
And
so I get Phoenix magazine.
Do you? Oh my gosh. So she found it, and then it was actually like a good program. And I was like, okay, just do it. Like it works for you. So she was going to this Burn boot camp, and she's like, and this people, they're like, their whole gimmick is to get you riled up to work out. Like they're like, not like, oh, come on, like cheery.
Yeah.
And she's like, so I don't like that. And she goes, and then we're doing like, essentially she described jumping lunges to goblet squat, to this, to that, to this, to that. And it's like a circuit based rotation. And she's like, and I'm just standing there like, this is so stupid. Like, I don't want to, like, this is not helping me.
Right.
And she said like the trainer came over and was like, you can do it faster, and she's like, no, I know I can, but I don't want to.
Right.
And so she's like, I'm trying to tell my girlfriend, like, you don't have to do it this way. Like, you literally can just do like 10 minutes at home. And she goes, I don't know if the girlfriend's looking at me like, yeah, but you're different or what, but she's kind of giving me this face of like, yeah, no. And she's like, and so now I know you and Christina's message, and this is how you must feel when you talk to people, of just like, oh my God, it doesn't have to be that hard. And I was like, that's hilarious. And she goes, she's like, honestly, your guys' business model, holy fuck, I commend y'all, because you're working against so much. And I was like, preach.
I had a conversation with Alenka.
Oh yeah.
On Friday. And she's like, you are the fucking authority.
Yeah.
Don't forget that. You're the authority.
Yeah.
Not these other motherfuckers.
Yeah.
You. No one has what you have. Keep going. And then we talked about the, making that the message. So like what I posted today, did you see it?
I probably did.
It's from the halftime show where Serena Williams is crip walking. So I don't know if you know the story.
Oh, was that true? I had no idea what was happening in that halftime show. I was like, God, I'm so old.
It was just, I mean,
or with
Kendrick Lamar is not like really, I mean, he's popular for the hip hop side of things, but he's not like, I don't know who would be a popular,
Taylor
like Snoop
Swift.
Dogg.
Oh, okay.
Like in hip hop.
Yeah. Dr. Dre.
Yeah.
Like all encompassing.
Right. And so I think there was that, but he was definitely sending a message that was for sure of,
I have no idea.
It was all red, white, and blue, Uncle Sam, but anyways, but the message for Serena Williams, she used to date Drake, and Drake and Kendrick Lamar have a huge beef.
The beef.
Drake talks shit about Serena on one of his rhymes, and in They Not Like Us, which is his big new song, he talks about not talking about Serena. And so she was there crip walking, and there's all this footage of her. And I was like, point of view, watching coaches do the same old
okay,
I
I didn't realize that was Serena Williams.
Yeah, she looks great.
I know.
I was like, Oh,
I have to rewatch
I loved
that.
it. So, yes, we are. And that's something that for our audience, like when we ask you guys for 5-star ratings and reviews, even like sharing this podcast or sharing our Instagram,
Mhm.
like that's why it's not just, oh,
Please.
please. It's really because we don't get a lot of traction. We don't, I mean, we're 100 plus episodes. I think we have the same amount of followers as we have episodes
Oh, okay.
at this point
Uh-huh.
on like podcasts.
Yeah.
Like our YouTube is good, but like that for us is because you believe in our message. And the more you share the message, the more people are going to hear it. You guys give a shit. And we want to expand that audience. So if you're listening, one of the best things you could do for us, 5-star rating and review on Apple, on Spotify, commenting, sharing our reels. That is huge. Sharing our reels, commenting on our reels, whatever that is, it's free. It helps us greatly.
Mhm.
And ultimately, you get to be a part of this charge of changing the industry. So please do that.
Mm.
And for our clients listening, one of the best ways you can do that is referrals. Even if, no, all of you listening, even if you're a client or not, referring to us will help more people.
Yeah.
So that's where I'm at with that. Because I have a secure attachment to this
I was going to say,
business.
should we talk about how they became attached to us?
Yes. All right. So today we're talking about attachment. Some of you are like, why? Understanding your attachment style will be a game changer in your own personal growth. And that's really what this podcast is about, is like, how can I be the best version of myself? And so the first one we want to look at is secure attachment. So this would be where you have trust that your parent will show up for you. There is a connection of being able to be seen, be heard, be vulnerable, have your own thoughts, feelings, your own autonomy. There is love and connection that's unconditional. It's not with condition or not ever withheld from you. And there's a lot of sense of predictability in the relationship itself. And really what that's going to create is trust and intimacy and the ability to communicate your needs, but then have openness to hear others' needs as well.
Okay.
And so when we are securely attached, what we're doing ultimately, and you guys have heard me say this before, is we're connected to self. Now that might sound weird when we're talking relational attachment to others. But as I had mentioned, when we experience those little T traumas, we become disconnected from who we are and we create these patterns of who we think people want us to be. And so when our parent showed up for us, when we were sad, they validated us. When we had any emotions, our emotions were validated. We were allowed to have, these off the wall, spontaneous thoughts, and they were celebrated because that's what kids do. Kids are spontaneous. They're clumsy.
Yeah.
They're creative, letting kids have even their imaginary friends. Like that's a creative side to them, and really just validating them as much as possible is how we create that. Thoughts on this?
I would say the important part of this is looking at long term of how do you want your kid to thrive in the world, right? And so it's kind of, from my perspective of parent, it's really hard because there's so much input coming in now about like, and I'm like, oh, this is probably how clients feel with diet and exercise, right? But so there's do this. This will give you this kind of attachment. If you do this, this will be their outcome. Like even there's like they're reading the book every day gives them so much more language ability, right? And so I think here is what the important part is most people want to be good parents. And what I'm learning and what I would encourage you to create that secure attachment is to respond in the way that feels best for you. Because for me, when I don't respond to like Olivia crying, it's just stressing in my own self, right? Where people are like, oh, you should just let her cry. I'm like, but to me, that doesn't feel good, right? And so, and that's the relationship we're continuing to take. And even like letting them kind of be independent, letting her express how she feels, but also not suppressing it too, right? And kind of engaging and understanding them. So every time she does something that I'm not aware of, then I'm like, oh, I'm learning now. Okay, I learned that. That's interesting to learn. And I try and keep that in mind because if I start beating myself up, then that's going to affect our attachment to each other and my response to her.
Yeah. Well, you have to think about it is that consistency in taking care of her.
Yeah.
Right. What happens when people turn to food as a coping skill is
Mhm.
because they didn't learn that co-regulation, right? So
Yeah.
her crying, when we just let her cry it out, we're telling her, figure it out yourself.
Yeah.
Right. And that was something that, like, I think the generation before my own, maybe even my generation, parents did.
Yeah.
They just let her cry it out. And it's like, that's why we're all on fucking Xanax.
Mhm.
So being able to comfort her emotional distress,
Mhm.
right? Knowing that someone will keep her safe and show up for her and allow her to explore and grow,
Mhm.
right? And like you said, you're learning as she's learning, and that's really great. And the other thing too is your next child will be different and you'll have that same
Yeah. Learning
experience. So an example is like a baby cries, parent picks them up, soothes them with gentle words. The parent themselves should be emotionally regulated as well.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because babies are boundaryless, meaning they pick up on that environment.
Yep. The
They're
co-regulation.
brilliant with
Mhm.
that. Yep. And they learn over time that their emotions are valid, right? And that relationships are safe for them. Now, in adulthood, obviously, that's going to allow us to express our needs, to allow others to express their needs, allow people to be themselves with respectful boundaries, being able to, both sides respect boundaries. And then that ultimately is going to form relationships of trust.
Well, trust in yourself, and then trust like that you know what to do, and that if you don't feel safe, trust of taking action rather than suppressing it.
Yes. And that trust in yourself is so important. We
Mhm.
talk about, why people restrict foods or follow certain diets, or,
Yeah, because they don't know.
they don't trust themselves. They don't trust their bodies. They don't trust their emotions. And so from a mindset point of view, this person is going to view food as nourishment
Mhm.
and movement as self-care. So it goes back to that kind of self-respect,
Yeah.
because I know myself. I know my body wants to move. I know when I'm hungry, when I'm full. And I have such a secure attachment to myself that I can provide what I need and what I don't need, right?
Yeah.
At times where I need to rest, or I am full.
Yeah.
Right. They listen to their hunger and fullness cues. And then again, things that most people, that's the funny thing about secure attachment is, I don't know a lot of people who are just naturally securely attached.
Mm.
I don't think I know anyone.
Yeah. Like
Trying to think.
Mhm.
But you can become this
Securely attached
over time. Yeah. So, good. Yeah, I'm trying to think.
of somebody.
Yeah.
No.
No.
Me? No.
No.
Yeah. No.
So the next one is
Mhm.
anxious attachment. Do you want to go this one?
Yeah. So this one, so think of anxiety, right? There's a lot of fear. There's a lot of need for reassurance. There's a lot of distrust in self. Emotional regulation is kind of off the charts, highs and
Yep.
lows. So again, placing yourself in like an anxiety state, how's your emotion? It's probably high or probably low. And then you have that self-guilt afterwards of how you behaved. And then the overanalyzation of it too. So this comes from like inconsistencies with caregiving. So mom sometimes came to you when you cried, sometimes she didn't. You never really knew what was going to happen. I think of someone in particular that I know that whose mother was, I don't want to say in and out of rehab because it wasn't like a lot, but there was times where her mother would be in a rehab facility for alcoholism and like prescription pill abuse. And so she has a really anxious attachment. And so because sometimes mom was there, sometimes mom's not. So now I'm learning like I can't really rely on mom, but I would really love to rely on mom. So then when I do have love, I grip onto them because they might be gone at any second.
Exactly.
And so that's what that looks like.
Well, and it doesn't have to be even that, traumatic, if you will. It could literally be a parent that works.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That travels for work.
You never know when they're going to be there.
Yeah. I mean, now you can have a different attachment with different parents too. But usually if you have security with one, that is, you're learning those skills and you're learning those things. But, it could be a parent, a couple who's having their own relational issues, and they, are dealing with their own emotions. So then they don't have the capacity to deal with yours.
Yeah.
Right. And sometimes they do, sometimes they don't, because mom and dad just got in a fight, or they're going through a divorce, or like my mom, her mom died.
Right.
You know, and she was, I mean, she lost her brother, her grandma, and her mom within the same like 2.5 years. And she was not
present.
No.
Yeah.
But she would sometimes be,
you
know. I interrupt this episode to bring you information on our Sprinkling Your Mindset Masterclass here at the Mindset of Matter. The masterclass will be on March 25th, and it will be covering all of the things we talk about here at the Mindset Mirror Connection podcast, and have you gaining understanding around your behaviors, your yo-yo dieting, your restricting and binging, you're starting over again on Monday. On top of that, you will get a $10 early bird discount to sign up for our 21-day Food and Body Freedom Challenge. This is a challenge that is a mini mindset method on top of receiving nutrition and exercise guidance. This is a taste of what we do here at the Mindset of Matter, and you'll receive our 21-day challenge at $29 if you sign up between now and our masterclass on March 25th. So I hope to see all of you both in the masterclass and in our 21-day challenge. Now, back to the show. Interestingly for me, I am not anxious. I'm the next one. But I definitely could have been. So again, that inconsistency in caretaking, sometimes nurturing, sometimes emotionally unavailable. The child doesn't know when they're going to receive care. So like if a kid falls and cries, some days mom rushes over and is like, oh my gosh, are you okay? Other times they just are like, you're fine, stop crying, right? Or like I said, you get an A+ on your report card and you want to run home and tell mom and dad, but you're a latchkey kid, and you go home and no one's there. And you're like, okay, well, that sucks.
Yeah. But they don't care.
Yeah. And I've heard,
story you tell yourself.
Well, yeah, exactly. I've had people tell me, like, I thought that work was more important than I was as a kid. When obviously it wasn't. It was a means to, protect the family and keep the family going. So again, there's that uncertainty. And then in the way I see this, and this is a very common one I see in relationships, where there's that overthinking things. Like one of the things I talk about in Dating Deja Vu is like how you want to, like, if someone doesn't text you right away, or this is how I said it. I said, you have to establish communication up front.
Yeah.
Because when you don't, you're going to be on your best behavior for those first, 3 weeks. So we're responding good morning texts and throughout the day and good night texts. And like there's this consistent communication happening. But then your natural response style or communication style will eventually come to head. Yeah. And if that's not it, then you're going to have a big problem, because if you're dealing with someone who's been ghosted before or has anxious attachment style, number one, you're going to see it real quick. She's going to be like,
hey, you didn't text me today.
Yeah, exactly. Like, is everything okay?
Yeah.
Did you not text me today? The gals with anxious attachment, they're so afraid of being abandoned that any sign sounds like, smells like, feels like, tastes like abandonment. Not all, what happens is a self-fulfilling prophecy. Well, they'll act on that feeling.
The fear.
Right. And do something that ultimately will cause the person to leave.
Yeah.
But it's because of that anxiety and the action that anxiety has brought. So in regards to your mindset for this person, if you haven't heard it already, they tie their self-image to
like the receiving.
Yes, I need validation. So they can be very fixated on how they look. They can also think, well, if I don't look a certain way, then I don't deserve love. Okay. And then in regards to behaviors, they are very much overthinking things, right? So they overthink their food choices. They have, immense fear of weight gain. They have immense fear of, again, rejection because the way they look, and they will oftentimes use food to manage that anxiety.
So even that's interesting that you say that they have such a focus on how they look, but they use the food to manage the anxiety, meaning there's a risk there for a binge or a surplus, right? Without knowing it. And then which would lead to weight gain.
Right. And it doesn't have to be all of them, right? But when your validation comes from external sources, like I need this, I didn't have this, then, society tells us, well, you're good, you can be loved, you're perfect or whatever, enough. if you look a certain way, right? So
Mhm.
that would make sense for them. And a lot of these women too they get so anxious. I mean, they will change shit about themselves. They'll go to extreme measures and, through whatever means they have
Mhm.
to like find that acceptance. Cause maybe if I'm smaller, thinner, skinnier, then that person will finally stay.
Oh,
Yeah.
when really it's them.
Right.
Interesting.
It's very interesting. All right. We'll get to that afterwards. Next one is avoidant, and I definitely connect to this. So discomfort with closeness, emotional detachment, self-reliance, and difficulty expressing emotions. This is when a caregiver is emotionally distant and almost rejecting. I think of parents who withhold love, which is something that I experienced. And there's this almost discouragement of emotional expression in the family. What I learned is that my emotional needs didn't matter,
Mhm.
right? And that I had to change the way that I express myself in an effort to keep my mom happy because
Mhm.
she was grieving. And she was depressed, quite frankly.
Yeah.
Like she was in big depression. And so I learned that when I was having emotions as a child, it was not okay to express them. I would get feedback like, "Oh, I'm the worst mother in the world." I'd get feedback like almost like matching my
Yes.
anger,
Yeah.
like my tantrum.
Yeah.
I could almost get an adult tantrum back.
Yeah.
Yeah. And physical abuse, which, she denies to this day, but I remember. So, so
It's in there.
yeah, don't forget that kind of thing. And so for me, I remember early before all the loss she experienced, like having these really pleasant moments with her too. But then it very much was like, it's like black and white of like this different person that I experienced. And
it's almost like Wizard of Oz. Remember how it's black and white and then it goes into
yes,
color? Like just that
exactly.
big of a change.
Oh yeah, it was crazy. And I just remember, okay, well, when I'm dancing and performing, she's happy. When I'm having emotions, she's not happy. And I learned like you can't express yourself. Or if I did express myself, I had to get louder than her. It was just like who can get louder, who could be
like the screaming
bigger.
contest. Remember? Did you ever do that when you were growing up? Like,
no, but we did the penis contest.
Well, more appropriate.
Are we appropriate?
No.
And so again, child expresses sadness, but the caregiver responds like, stop being so insensitive or ignores them. I remember if I did something wrong, my mom would silent treatment me.
Oh.
Yeah, she would just want to talk to me. And I'd be like, then I'd have, and the other thing I would have to do is these like big dramatic apologies. Like, I'm so sorry. I'll never do it again. Your window. Yes, exactly.
Here's your flowers.
Because I needed to like serve her ego, right? And like protect her. And like, it was my fault, I shouldn't have had this emotion.
Yeah, sorry, I was 11 today.
Yeah, sorry, I was literally sorry, I was an 8-year-old today. And so I struggle with emotional vulnerability, as I talked about with you guys. I feel smothered when people get too close to me at times and prefer independence and may ghost or withdraw if things get too deep.
Did you ever ghost guys?
It's funny. I probably am a bit more disorganized now that I say it out loud because I would act on anxieties.
Oh.
But normally I would ghost.
Wait, when you say disorganized, you mean like a jumble between all the attachments?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because there were times where I was just like super insecure and like acted off of my belief that I wasn't good enough, which caused the person to leave. I think that was just more insecurity than anything else. And I didn't know who I was. But I'm trying to think if I ghosted people. I don't remember. I don't think so.
Yeah, it's been a while.
Yeah, it's been a while. So interestingly, this person, me, sees emotion and needs as weakness. Okay. So they will use food and exercise to maintain control. So I was listening to this podcast earlier and she goes, is like emotional restriction disordered eating? And I was like, fuck yeah, it is.
Emotional restriction disordered eating.
I would restrict food and like, my vice as a child was not emotionally like turning to food. It was getting validated for how I could eat so healthy and be so fit. And I learned that
my ears are ringing.
Yeah, that was like a way to control things almost of like, look at you can do this thing that other people
Yeah,
can't do,
yeah.
which is a part of that. Like
Validating.
I do it by myself.
Yeah.
I'm different.
Yeah.
Like so this is how I figured out how to handle it. Now, not everyone does that. Other people will use food to cope. I use it in a different way. And I think a lot of people listening can handle that. So what I wrote here is avoids emotional eating, but engages in over restriction, rigid control, and compulsive exercise to maintain control.
That's so interesting because I was identifying more with the anxious attachment.
Mhm.
But then when I hear that, I'm like, avoidant attachment? I don't know.
Well, you were an only child.
I know. So what does that mean, therapist?
There's a lot of responsibility put on only children to like maintain the family dynamic.
Really?
Mhm.
I didn't.
You're the
feel that
only
way.
one that can tell if you have good or bad parents. There's no other child to like be this. You're the scapegoat, the golden child, the lost child, the mascot. You're every role in a family that exists.
Oh God.
It's a lot of responsibility. Luckily, I had good parents.
Yeah. Like thinking like, what was I?
And that's the other thing too, is like obviously caretaking or caregivers, excuse me, are what create these attachments.
Yeah.
But you can start seeing even just challenges with this, like friendships and bullying and
Oh yeah.
stuff like that. So keep that in mind.
Okay.
And so, if you think again for the avoidant, I'm avoiding emotions. I'm avoiding everyone but me. I will take care of this myself. And so we just get hyper fixated on like the self. And for me, it was as long as I'm lean and eating healthy and controlling my life through that, then I'm fine.
Okay.
So I don't know.
That's interesting.
It is. All right. Last one is disorganized. So this is kind of a mix between the two. So fearful behavior, confusion in relationship, mixing the desire for closeness with fear of rejection. So caregivers in this situation give both a source of comfort and fear. Okay. Often due to trauma, abuse, erratic behavior. The child doesn't know what to expect, leading to conflicting emotions. So yeah, this could apply to me. That's funny.
But does the disorganized ever apply with the secure, or it's only?
No.
Okay. So secure is like its own.
It's like a unicorn.
Okay.
It doesn't exist.
Good luck. Okay.
The limit does not exist.
Okay. So disorganized always applies to avoidant and anxious.
So it's a mix.
A mixed. Okay.
In certain situations for me, especially in relationships, I would show up avoidant, and others I would show up
anxious.
Okay. There was only a few that I showed up anxious, and it was usually a guy who was more.
I was going to say, what would depend on that?
Was he out independent me?
Oh, yeah.
He was
he
more
really
overly.
Didn't need you.
He really didn't need me. And I wasn't ready for that.
Yeah.
Because I needed to be needed.
Yeah.
Right. And so
because you serve. That's
so then I needed him. So then it swapped. And then I became fear of abandonment with him.
Interesting.
Whereas when guys did need me, I stayed in the role of I'll take care of you. Now I have someone who doesn't need me. And we work just fine because I did my own work on myself.
Because I got my shit together.
Yeah.
Okay. So disorganized. So it's a blend of the two.
Yeah. It's like this push-pull, right?
Okay.
Seeking closeness, then withdraw. Seeking closeness, then withdrawing.
So it sounds pretty erratic.
Yes. And not trusting, right? So there's a lack of trust. And then there's just that kind of self-sabotage that I've already talked about, like in fear of like, okay, I'm going to get close. And
Never
then I
mind.
withdraw. No, that's the part I don't associate with because like I could get close. And I wouldn't withdraw. I would get close and feel suffocated. Like it was suffocating, but then I would just take it out on them. And I would like tell them they were bad.
Okay.
So that was a fun time. But this person, I think of a good friend of mine. He will like create this whole fucking like
new identity,
white picket fence bullshit and then cut it off like that. And I know his story. I know his history. And I'm just like, he always says, I am my father. And his dad passed away, unfortunately, single and alone.
Yeah.
And it was kind of that push-pull. And I watched it play out in a relationship with my other close friend. They dated. That's how I met her. And I was just like, oh my gosh, I need therapy.
Please.
And his mom's a therapist.
Oh no. Okay.
Hopefully he doesn't listen to this podcast.
Sorry if you do.
So for this push-pull, like the relationship with food and exercise both become a source of comfort and distress, right? So they may swing between that binge eating and restriction, right? And that struggle with self-trust in general. And so this one's kind of that like back and forth that we oftentimes
binge
see.
restrict. Yeah.
Yeah. Where they can, I mean, and it doesn't necessarily have to be that back and forth swing like so consistent, like
Or
not
like all or
like,
nothing.
Yeah, it could just be like I get very rigid for X amount of time, right? And I can be I see this with clients. I can be in it, I can do all the things, and then once I decide it's done or I feel overwhelmed or whatever it is, then I go back to like just whatever fuck it's. But and it can also be where it's that binging, you know, on the weekends and restricting on the weekdays.
Like the micros compared to the macros.
Yeah. And so now I gave these examples just based on the experience that I have. They're not hard and fast, but the reason I want to talk about them is, you know, these, as you guys have learned already, like your upbringing very much determines how you relate to yourself, right? And the way you look at food, the way you put value on food and how you eat, right? And so if I'm not good enough to receive love and attention, right, and people are going to leave me, that obviously is going to translate in how I treat myself. Yeah. And so I just thought it was a good conversation. Plus, it doesn't even have to, we put an aspect of it about food and exercise because that's what we do. But even just learning about these is important. Yeah. Like in relationships. So if you want to hear more about that, you can check out Dating Deja Vu, my new dating podcast. Woohoo! Oh my God. I have not even talked about that. So I call my listeners my Deja crew. Oh. And when I do reality relationships, Deja View.
What is reality relation? What do you?
Where I'm going to break down like relationships on reality TV.
Okay,
based on like this.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Gosh, I wish I could keep up on life.
Yeah, it's okay. All right. So what to do here? Okay. So I'm going to go through each and then we're going to talk about some things that you can start doing now.
Okay.
So the first one is our avoidant kings and queens. We want to develop the ability to soothe ourselves, right? So think about co-regulation as a child. Now, when we have emotions, what are we doing with them?
Identifying them.
Yes.
Thank you.
Identify, become aware, and then allow that emotion to naturally work through the body. Two things I want to say about this. When it's our own emotion, lasts about 90 seconds. Promise you that. Tell me differently in the comments. When it's not your emotion, it will eat at you all day. When it's carried from someone else.
Okay. So like husband is mad.
Correct. Okay. And you're carrying it. It won't ride. You can't ride the wave of that because it's not your own. You have to set a boundary with that. But when it's your own anxiety, fear, anger, like I think I said this when Brookie passed, I had these massive highs of sadness, but they only lasted about 90 seconds. I cried about her this weekend. Lasted about 90 seconds. Yeah. I just cry sometimes.
I know. We didn't talk this weekend.
Yeah. I miss her. So we want to learn some self-soothing, and then we want to build some independence in ourselves. That is, there's so many aspects of this that we do in our program. Some of our new forms are like trusting your intuition. Yeah. We have a new form on that. You know, connecting to your voice, right? And how to set boundaries with people. Creating like that curiosity in the self. And really just doing something, even if it's a program like ours, like that's so many people say on that first ideal self, like, what's one way you've acted like your ideal self this week? And they're like, I joined this program. And I'm like, yes, that is true. So anything you would add to that?
Not really. I was thinking more so because you had said creating independence, is that the same thing in your mind as creating like that trust in yourself?
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay. Well, and you have that's a great question. We have to stop looking to everyone else to answer our questions. Even I think that reflects in our coaching so much is that we guide, but we don't demand.
No.
Right? Because I want that person to come up with their own solutions. In one of my videos, when we onboard, I say, listen, we have boundaries with how we want you to communicate with us.
Mhm.
And it goes like this. What's the problem? Why you think it's a problem? What's a potential solution? Like I teach that in the first week of
Right.
onboarding, because I want people to start to like create that in themselves, rather than if we tell them everything,
Yeah.
they're dependent on us.
Yes.
Right. And so,
Well, and that's not to say to defend us on that too, that we're going to leave you floundering. It's more so to say of like, you have got to learn how to manage and work through this without me there.
Correct.
Because at some point when they finish the method program,
Mhm.
there's the other like lower tier programs that are more independently skilled.
Right.
And we want you to have those skills when you go into them,
Mhm.
because if we don't, then we need to go back up to the method program
Mhm.
and work through that more. I don't want to say comprehensively because it's comprehensive, but maybe longer together or something like that.
I have a client right now. She's been with me for about 7 months.
Uh-huh.
And she's very much, I hear that like fear of abandonment,
Yeah.
but then she will create this self-sabotage with binge eating, because it's, if she's just overweight, that's the reason why people leave her.
Oh.
Not because of her character.
Yeah.
And so that's been something we've like had to very much still work through, even though she's been through the method.
Well, because
we wouldn't even have got to that part if she wouldn't have gone through the method. Now we're like, onion is like full open, full bloom.
We're crying.
Yeah. Full Texas Roadhouse. And I love it. I love it. I love it.
Okay. So go into your anxious of how we solve that.
We just did anxious. We're doing avoidant
You said
now.
avoidant in the last one.
Did I? Okay. So that was wrong. So the first one, avoidance. We want to practice self-soothing, naming our emotions, riding the wave, having a skill set to calm ourselves down, and practicing independence and intuition, listening to the gut, listening to the self. For our avoidant kings and queens, for reals this time, practice vulnerability by gradually sharing emotions with safe people. My favorite place to start this is with friends.
Yes.
Friendships are a great place to practice
I'm thinking of someone in particular, and I always I ask her, did you tell your lover? Because one of my clients. Yeah. Did you tell your lover? No. Are you going to? Should I? What do you think I'm going to say? And she goes, fine. And I go, okay. Good. Because that's it. She doesn't want him. It's so funny because she didn't want him to know that she was feeling all these ways. So they're not fighting about the dishes, right? They're fighting about how she actually feels, but he doesn't even know what fight he's in.
Right.
And I'm like, you have to open up to him because he doesn't know what's happening, and it's not fair for him.
Right. Well, it's not fair for her either. Yeah. She's not giving him the literal, like
the actual
playbook.
Context. Yeah.
So we're like, this is what's wrong. Here's how to fix it. The other thing is challenging the belief that dependence is weakness. Right. And that's a hard one for me. And that's not even the belief. Let me rewrite that. Challenging the belief that no one's going to show up for you.
Okay.
Because we believe that people aren't going to show up for us. So then we act too soon. We don't allow people the autonomy to do for us. Right?
Yeah.
I want to tell everyone a secret. I practiced this for my birthday this year, and my husband still didn't plan my birthday. I didn't plan anything until like a week. I was waiting.
That's why. Do you want to have a birthday party?
I wanted him to plan it. I'm not planning it ever again. And then for our disorganized, we want to. This is one that's a little bit more difficult. It's going to have a little bit more. They're all going to have layers to them. So therapy is always recommended for this.
But not for the other two?
But for all of them.
All of them.
Okay. Yeah. And I would say helping you to, again, build more trust in yourself, listen to yourself. Because for this person, again, there's both those aspects of relationships are exhausting and I'm fearing that someone's going to leave me. It's like both of those things at the same time are happening. And so being able to build that interdependence of I can do for myself and I can ask for help and building that trust in the self. And then once you have that trust built in the self, you can then witness that in others. So what does that look like? I mean, it can look in so many ways. So you have okay, let's use an example. I have been freaking out about business and I gave myself a year being super vulnerable to all of you, to if things don't change, shutting the doors. You know this, which is really hard for me to tell you guys. I'm going to cry. And I was sulking in it, and I was like, maybe I need to go back to therapy and just like open my own practice. And I like was sulking, and then I asked for help. So I tried to do it myself by different avenues, right? Creating all these different funnels and trying different things. And finally, I forget sometimes that I have the most amazing business coach that is literally at my fingertips. And she and I got on a call. She sat me down. She walked me through everything. And I got that help. So I tried it myself, and it wasn't working. Because if you try it yourself and it works, great. But it wasn't working. So then I had to ask her for help. And she very much like deep dove and showed up for me in the way I needed. You do that too. So I don't think you don't. Not that I thought that you think you don't. Do you?
That I think I don't show up for you?
Yeah.
I think right now I'm showing up for you less.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
No, that's not true.
Okay.
And so that interdependence is I try it myself and it works. If it works, great. But if it's not working, I also ask for help.
I think that's so funny that you say that, or it's not funny, haha. But yeah, like your feelings are invalidated. I'm being your mother.
Thanks, Mom.
Yeah. But it's ironic that you say that, because I find that so many clients come to that point too when we do our consult or like our clarity calls, right? They have tried this, tried that, they did all these things themselves, and they just don't know what to do anymore.
Yeah.
So instead of me keep floundering and being in like this anxious state, here's my brain, I'm giving it to you. So like for you, here's my brain, Olenka. I'm assuming it's Olenka. Yeah.
It was.
I'm giving my brain to you because this is causing me too much. I need you to take it and digest it, because I think what happens too is when you get in that state of like, I'm trying this, I'm trying this, I'm trying this, you're not making, I don't want to say for you, like you're not making rational decisions. You're just making like, I'll try that then. Like it's changing of quick decisions.
I've done that.
Yeah. Rather than like sit.
I will say that the decisions I've made, like I'll research them.
Yeah.
But I will make a decision quickly, because I also have read a lot on like intuition, like CEOs, like you sent me something where it was like, make the choice.
Yeah.
Like don't just make the choice. And if you fuck up,
it'll keep going.
Yeah. So there's that part too. Like I listen to all these CEO podcasts and they're like, you know,
bet on billions.
Ford Motor Company started with $1 in his pocket.
Yeah. You're like,
okay,
I got $1. Yeah.
$1. But no, you know, I was just thinking about, which we didn't have in the notes here, is like how these attachments play out in like the diets themselves.
Oh, we should do a follow-up on that.
We should.
Why don't we do that?
Yeah. So we kind of introduced them, gave you some ideas around behaviors of each. But like, if you think about, and it makes sense for me now, like avoidant. Yeah, we're going to have to do a whole thing on that. All right. Again, we want to recommend that for any of you who struggle with the avoidant, the anxious, or the disorganized, that we seek professional support. We have the self-awareness. You obviously listening to this podcast is going to help you with that. Being more mindful with your emotions and your thoughts, and helping to regulate both, and building relationships with yourself first, a relationship with yourself first that is securely attached, where we're building trust, we're listening to our bodies, we're listening to our hunger and fullness cues, we're listening to our wants and needs, and then you will be able to better express that in the future. If you like this information, as I asked for, please give us a 5-star rating and review, or share this with someone who might benefit from this podcast. You can also follow us on Mindset Mirror Connection Podcast on Instagram and YouTube. If you want any information about our coaching programs, please check out the link below. Do not forget about our Spring Clean Your Mindset Masterclass on March 25th, and then our 21-day Food and Body Freedom Challenge starting March 31st, which is basically a mini mindset method. And I'm going to teach you our sustainable eating quadrant, which will help build a foundation for a secure relationship with food. I'm also going to teach you what the fuck that means, because everyone talks about it. What's a secure relationship with food? What's a secure relationship with money?
What's a sustainable relationship quadrant too?
Yeah, which I'll teach you.
That.
And then you also get access to our Mindset Movement app, which allows for you to choose your adventure when it comes to movement. So
wait, I want to plug Mindset of Mommies.
Do it.
Mindset of Mommies. So this is an 8-week, essentially course that I host, and it is focused on how to prepare you for the best pregnancy yet. So the ideal candidate for this is looking into getting pregnant. They're currently pregnant, trying to get pregnant. You can be in your 3rd trimester, 1st trimester, not even pregnant yet. And what we're going to do is break down the exercise components of pregnancy, nutrition components, support, resources, the testing that you're going to get. And then we're also going to have weekly group calls. So there's tons of resources that I give in this. You've also got a 3-day-a-week exercise program for beginners or advanced. So essentially an at-home version and a gym version. Mm-hmm. There's also pelvic floor rehab exercises in there and preparatory exercises in there. Custom nutrition coaching with me, and then weekly group calls with the gang.
Dang.
Yay.
Love it. Got a lot to offer all of y'all. So we hope to see more people coming through.
Yeah.
But other than that, if you are whatever attachment style you have, we want you to remember.
Securely attached to us.
If you are securely attached to us, we want you to remember this one last
What'd you
thing.
say in the mind?
Wait, I didn't finish it.
Oh,
one last thing.
What'd you say in the mind?
You see in the mirror. Goodbye.